Welcome to Anwar Gargash Diplomatic Academy Distinguished Diplomat Interview Series, Your Excellency Bernardino León. His Excellency Bernardino León is an experienced diplomat with over 27 years of experience. He has previously served as the Director General of the Anwar Gargash Diplomatic Academy, also the United Nations Special Representative, and as the head of the United Nations Support Mission in Libya. He formerly served as the European Union Special Representative for the Southern Mediterranean, the Secretary General for the Spanish Prime Minister Office, and the Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs. His area of expertise has been mediation and negotiation, as well as intercultural dialogue, security, energy, and migration. He participated in several human rights initiatives, notably in the Arab world, and facilitated critical discussion in Libya, Egypt, and Tunisia during the events of the Arab Spring. His Excellency holds a diploma in international relations from University of Barcelona and a degree in law from the University of Malaga, and followed postgraduate courses at London King's College and Sorbonne University. I'd like to start by thanking you, Your Excellency, for making the time to speak to us today.
It's a pleasure.
It's such an honor and pleasure to have you here as well. My name is Hamda Al-Kuwaiti, and I am a diplomat trainee here in Agda. So please allow me to ask you a few questions about diplomacy. To start, my first question is, why does diplomacy matter, and do we still need diplomats?
Thank you, Hamda. Great question to start our conversation. Definitely, it's not only that diplomacy still matters, but it matters a lot. I think we are in a change of era, and the liberal order is disappearing gradually, although the pandemic has probably accelerated the process. And we're going to enter in a more uncertain world. Definitely a world where previous bridges, previous global agreements will not be valid anymore. And we will need to build new bridges. We have new powers, new countries, new regions that are relevant. And this is a good thing for the world. I'm very happy to see that Asia, Africa, Latin America are asking to be around the table to decide about the world in a way that they didn't do before. And this is an excellent news for the world, but definitely will change the landscape, will change the environment, will change the ways we understand the world. And these new bridges will have to be built by the professionals who know how to do it. Let me just give you a very simple example. 4 years ago, we didn't need negotiators to negotiate health agreements. We were not worried about the supply chains around the world. Now we need professionals who are able to negotiate all this. And this is not someone who is in a lab creating a vaccine, which is of course very important, but they have to be researching. There are other professionals who will help these experts to cooperate with others, to have country-to-country agreements and cooperation, and these are the diplomats. So the diplomats will be much more relevant in the coming 10, 20 years than they have been in the past 20 years. And if I can use a word to define this, diplomats are trust builders. And in a world in which trust will be important, as it is going to happen in the coming years, diplomats will definitely be at the center stage.
Okay, my next question is, what are the most significant ways that tomorrow's diplomat need to differ from today's diplomats?
Another very good question, and another difficult one. I think, as I said, the world which is coming is very different. And even if all diplomats are always told that they have to be ready for a different challenge every day, the truth is that the world that our generation of diplomats have known in general has been as a world where you could expect, even the uncertain was to some extent something you could expect. Whereas diplomats in the time which is coming, in the time in which we are already living, will really have to be ready for very uncertain events. Who could expect a war in Ukraine? Is a war in Ukraine an example of what is coming? Probably yes. I remember the night before the invasion happened, I was talking to a group of diplomats with huge expertise. You could say that in that conversation, 2 or 3 of the best 15 diplomats of the last years were there. And none of them expected Vladimir Putin to give the order to invade Ukraine. And it happened just 24 hours later. So diplomats have to be ready for a world where these kind of events can happen. We used to say that diplomacy is like an action film. A good script for an action film is the script in which events keep happening very quickly, and when you think that nothing worse can happen to the hero, something even worse will happen, and worse and worse. And diplomacy is like that. It's like a good action film where things keep happening. You don't have time to breathe, because when you get up and you come with ideas about the Ukraine war, then there will be an energy or an inflation crisis, and this will affect the whole international community, and you will have to come with ideas. And when it's happening, other problems will come. So that's what diplomats in the new time will have to understand, that uncertainty is a different type of uncertainty, and you will have to be ready for that kind of uncertainty.
Okay. Your Excellency, you have a tremendous work with the human rights initiatives, and you also mentioned that now new countries are planning to join the table and have discussed different things. So do you see that more peace and human rights will come throughout the world and today itself, and why?
Unfortunately, I'm not very optimistic, Hamda. No. The reason is that for some actors not taking seriously enough human rights, the excuse is that human rights is a Western invention, and that others that are not Westerners should find their own way. And this is not true. This is not true. Human rights is not a Western invention. Human rights is about human dignity, about treating all citizens with the same dignity. And since the world is changing so much, my concern is that in a world where the West will be less relevant, and this is pure math, in demographic terms, in economic terms, so in political terms, the West will be less relevant. That's obvious. And as I said, this is a good thing for the world. I believe in a world where all cultures, all countries, all regions matter the same. That's good. But this should not allow some actors, let me give the example of Vladimir Putin, to say, no, human rights has nothing to do with Russia. This is a Western invention. I am now fighting the West, so don't tell me about human rights. Should not happen. But unfortunately, it's going to happen, and we know it's going to happen. So if my opinion is that the human rights battle should be a battle better fought by non-Western countries. You are a young woman in an Arab Muslim country. You're here as a potential, I hope, very soon, a diplomat, ready to play a prominent role in your country. And I think you are a great example. Women's rights are not respected the same way as they are respected in this country, in other places. And I think people like you, diplomats like you, are the ones who will take the banner, will be at the front line, and you will be much more efficient than, let's say, a diplomat from a Western country, because you have a credibility in your own story, in the story of your family, in the story of your society, and this is what probably can help the cause of human rights. But it's going to be a tough battle. It's not going to be easy. Definitely things that we have seen in the past 20, 30 years in terms of human rights. Let me give the example, for instance, of responsibility to protect, which is an aspirational principle that I still think is very relevant. But obviously, this kind of aspirational principles and the body of human rights with the different civil and political, the economic, social and cultural rights, the climate change related rights, environment rights, which are all of them so important, are going to be challenged tremendously in the coming years.
So, as you mentioned, and as I am now a trainee diplomat, so a diplomat in the making, so I had to ask you this question. What would be your one key message to diplomats starting out on a diplomatic career?
The most difficult thing for a young diplomat is to understand that they are not choosing only a profession. You are choosing a life. Many of your friends, the people with whom you went to school, are now starting their professions. Maybe they will work in a company, or they will work in any kind of business, or they will be whatever, an engineer, but if they start working doing these next door, and after 2-3 years they want to do something different, their life will not change that much. This is not the case for diplomats. You are choosing a completely different life to most of the people you know. You will live in different countries, in different cultures. You will have to adapt to things that many of your friends living here will not be able to understand or to imagine. You will face security challenges, cultural challenges. You will have to organize your family around your profession. And this is difficult, for instance, when you have babies or, young children in their early stages. There are certain countries where this is a challenge. Or when your kids reach the university age and then they have to be somewhere else and not with you, or with your husband in the future will have a profession and will want to have a career, while you will want to pursue your career. So it's a challenge. It's not easy to be successful as a diplomat and to be successful in family life. But you can make it. It's the only thing you need is to think long term, to imagine what kind of challenges are waiting for you there and to be ready to face them. So one of the things I advise to young diplomats is, if you want to be a successful diplomat, you need to be a complete diplomat. It means going to difficult places, for instance. I started my career in Liberia during the Civil War. From Liberia, I moved to Algeria, also during the Civil War. These kind of difficult times helped me to become a better diplomat, to understand challenges that you don't understand in other, let's say, easier environments. And if you want to do this kind of difficult things, do them when you are young. Do it at the beginning of your career. Later on, it will become more and more difficult. And you will want to, because of your family, because of your life, you will want other different challenges. I respect them very much, but if you want to be a good diplomat, you need to be a comprehensive diplomat. You need to know all kinds of situations. Probably if I didn't go to Liberia or Algeria, I would not have been able to succeed in other difficult environments when I was an older diplomat. So you need to have a balance in your career. And this means choosing not shying away from tough challenges, but doing them when you are young, because it's a long life.
Another question is, if you can share with us an example of successful diplomacy that you have witnessed, and tell us what, in your view, made it so effective.
I think the most challenging school for diplomats and negotiations is the Middle East. And I was fortunate enough to start working in the Middle East as a diplomat when I was very young. And I have spent many years in the Middle East. It means that I have seen, I joined the Spanish Foreign Ministry when the Madrid Peace Conference in 1991, the first big conference, peace conference in the Middle East, happened. I joined barely a year and a half earlier, and I was in the right place when the Madrid conference was organized. And since then, I have been involved in other regions, but mostly in the Middle East or around the Middle East. I was in the first European Union team dealing with the Middle East peace negotiations. I was in foundations dealing with the Middle East issues. I've been as a politician dealing with the Middle East, etc., with the UN, with the EU. So I was privileged to have all these different perspectives. So I have seen, rather than one experience, I will tell you there is a line of events from the Oslo agreements, from the Taba, Shepherdstown, the number of agreements I have seen and efforts, the Quartet, Camp David, so many different experiences, which you could put the beginning of this process in Madrid, 1991 Peace Conference, with still the Soviet Union, and I pay tribute to President Gorbachev, who just passed away and who was there when the Soviet Union was collapsing and had the guts and the energy to still help President Bush to succeed with the rest of the world in the conference. Up to the Abrahamic Accord recently, in which the UAE has played such an important job, but with 2 American administrations involved, with the support of many others around the world, with countries like Morocco and Bahrain and others involved. So this school for a diplomat is the most challenging one, but it's also the finest example of success in a very tough and difficult environment, because the challenges you have in the Middle East in terms of social, historic, geographic, religious challenges is unique.
Okay, great. Your Excellency, you mentioned that most of your work was done in the Middle East and maybe around the Middle East. So during your tenure as the United Nations Special Representative and head of the United Nations Support Mission in Libya, you brought a fraction together who opposed each other but successfully brokered the Libyan political agreement and the Presidential Council that put an end to the civil war. What is your secret to create a political unity?
There are no secrets. There are no secrets. Hard work is the short answer. Hard work and a fantastic team. A team that was working for hours, for days, for weeks without rest. A team that was always a step ahead of the event. You need anticipation to succeed in negotiations, and a team that supported me with patience, with perseverance. And I think, since you mentioned political unity, I would say that beyond all these, let's say, technical skills and the good negotiation with all ticking positively in all the areas, but I'd say that also a team able to understand the human dimension that every negotiation has. Libya was challenging from a human dimension because these were brothers fighting brothers with very deep grievances, very deep issues, but at the end of the day they were brothers. And the human aspect of the Libyan negotiation was very challenging, equally rewarding. When you have problems between brothers, these are the worst type of conflict you may see. But once the conflict is over, once you reach an agreement, then it's very rewarding, because there's nothing better than two brothers, two members of the same family reconciling. So these are let's say, the secrets. But of course, this was a long process of a year and a half, with many drafts, with many stories, with many issues, and it's very difficult for me to summarize that in a short answer.
Okay, great. Another question is, as a seasoned negotiator and a mediator, what would be your 3 tips and tricks to be an efficient negotiator?
I mean, whenever you talk about skills and negotiations, you normally will have a list of, let's say, 10 skills, 15 skills. I'm teaching a class on negotiations tomorrow, precisely with a case study of Libya, and probably I will mention 12, 15 different skills. It's difficult. Now, if I have to choose 3, probably I will tell you something today, and tomorrow, if I am asked the same question, I will mention another 3. But let's try. First of all, I think a good negotiator needs to be a good listener. We always say a good negotiator has to read the room, has to have this psychological capacity to understand the people around the table and how better treat them and you know, bring them to a final agreement. But this requires more than anything else, more than psychology, it's just to listen, to understand every word, to understand what they are saying, to understand what they are not saying, and so being a good listener is the first one. I mentioned before, in the case of Libya, being a step ahead. This is anticipation. Anticipation is very, very important, because if you are able to imagine what new challenges, what new problems, what new issues will come when things move. You know, negotiation is an uncertain way. Once it starts, it will follow a path that no one is expecting. And in many cases, it will be very difficult for negotiators around the table following that path. So try always to imagine the path, difficult as it is, and try always to be ahead. So anticipation, number 2. And number 3, precisely because the path is so difficult, you should never forget what is the end game. So once you are in the negotiations, the process becomes very important. And sometimes the process is everything. Look at the Middle East. We used to say at a certain point, it's not anymore the Middle East peace process, it's just the process. You know, we keep discussing the rules and issues so much related to the process that we forget that at the end of the day we are trying to reach peace. And that's the end game. And this needs to be defined. You say peace, everybody wants peace. If you ask the Israelis or the Palestinians or anyone, any actor in the Middle East, they will tell you, no, we all want the same. But of course, a negotiator has nothing in his mind if you just tell peace. What is peace? How do you define peace in terms of something realist that could be acceptable for everyone? So far, it's very difficult. But there is a concept there. There is a solution there. Good negotiators have been defining impossible peace agreements for years, for centuries, and same as it has been possible in other regions, it should be possible here. But it's just having this end game, knowing very well where you want to reach, what you want to do, where you see a feasible solution acceptable for everyone. That's probably the most difficult feature for a negotiator. So summarizing, being a good listener, anticipating, and never forgetting the end game.
Okay. Your Excellency, you held various interesting positions in the past, from being the European Union Special Representative to the Southern Mediterranean, also Secretary General at Spanish Prime Minister Office and Secretary of State to the Foreign Affairs, also the United Nations Special Envoy, as well as the first Director General of our Academy. The question is, what would you say was the most rewarding position that you held, and which one was the most challenging one?
The most challenging, Libya. I don't think I have ever done something as difficult. Libya and probably the EU envoy to the Southern Mediterranean, which means to the Arab Spring countries. Arab Spring has been a very complicated time, a very challenging time for the region, and both go together. I would have not been the UN envoy to Libya, special representative to Libya, without the EU Arab Spring work. So both go together, and this has been probably the most challenging position. The most rewarding has been ACDA. There's no doubt. I am a very strong believer in life learning. Diplomats have to be life learners. If you want to be able to transfer your knowledge to new generations, you need to be in touch with those generations. And those generations, people like you, Hamda, can teach a lot and can give us a lot. And this is my feeling when I think of the more than 5 years I have spent here in the Academy. It's been very rewarding. I gave a lot, but I received even more. And it helped me a lot in terms of live learning, in terms of understanding where I still need to work, where I still need to grasp if I want to continue to work as a diplomat in the future, if I want to return to a professional diplomatic life. And it's been a fantastic experience, really very rewarding.
That's great. That brings us to the end of our interview for today. On behalf of all of us, I would like to thank you, Your Excellency, for being here with us today.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks.